You have been trying to get money for a long time now. Maybe you pray at night. Maybe you repeat affirmations in the mirror. Maybe you sit in silence and ask the universe to finally send you relief. And maybe, if you are honest with yourself, you are still waiting. Here is the uncomfortable truth that Neville Goddard spent his entire life trying to tell you. The very act of asking, hoping, and begging for money is the single greatest signal your mind can send to keep wealth away from you. This is not about worthiness. It is not a punishment. The reason hoping fails is simpler and more mechanical than most people want to hear. Hope carries the emotional fingerprint of lack. You do not beg for something you already own. And the deep mind, the part of you that builds your reality, does not hear your words. It reads your state. Neville Goddard called the solution Brazen Impudence. This is not a polite concept. It is not the version of manifestation that tells you to be patient and trust the process. This is the law in its most aggressive, most honest, and most powerful form. Today, you will understand why the universe bows not to those who ask, but to those who command. Stay until the end. What you are about to learn will permanently change the way you relate to money, to God, and to yourself. Listen closely. This is where most people lose the game before it even begins. From childhood, most people are taught that wanting something deeply and asking for it humbly is the spiritual and moral way to receive. You fold your hands, you bow your head, you make yourself small before a power greater than yourself, and you hope it notices you. This pattern feels virtuous. It feels humble. But according to Neville Goddard, it is a catastrophic mistake in the mechanics of consciousness. The fallacy at the center of it all is this: hope implies separation. When you hope for money, your inner state is broadcasting one message. It is saying, the money is out there, I am in here, I do not have it, I need it to come to me. That statement of separation, felt deeply and repeatedly in your emotional body, becomes the instruction your subconscious mind executes on your behalf. The subconscious does not argue with your assumptions. It confirms them. Think of your subconscious as a printing press. It does not decide what to print. It reproduces whatever you place on its surface. If you press the image of lack onto it, lack is what it prints into your world, day after day, with perfect precision and zero apology. Your subconscious mind is completely neutral and completely obedient. The danger is not that it will refuse your request. The danger is that it will grant it. Most people are requesting poverty through the very prayers they believe will bring them wealth. Stop and feel the weight of that sentence. The beggar energy, the low frequency of hoping and wishing and pleading, is not a path toward abundance. It is a wall built directly around it. Every time you look at your bank account with fear, every time you calculate whether there is enough, every time you repeat an affirmation while quietly believing the opposite, you are pressing another image of lack onto the press. Neville Goddard described two entirely different internal states. The beggar state is one of perpetual incompleteness, a mind that lives in the feeling of not yet. The commander state is the consciousness of someone who already possesses what the outer world has not yet reflected. These are not attitudes in the motivational sense. They are two different identities operating at two entirely different frequencies. One builds a wall. The other walks through it. The beggar looks at his condition and prays it changes. The commander looks at his imagination and knows it already has. The shift between the two is not a matter of trying harder. It is a matter of understanding what the law actually requires. And the law, as Neville Goddard taught it, begins not with action, but with assumption. You will never pray your way into wealth while feeling poor. That is the diagnosis. Now let us find the cure. There is a passage of scripture that Neville Goddard returned to again and again throughout his lectures. Luke, chapter 11, verse 8. And when he decoded it, he revealed something that overturned everything most people were ever taught about prayer, God, and receiving. The parable is simple. A man goes to his neighbor at midnight. He knocks and asks for bread to feed a friend who has arrived unexpectedly. The neighbor calls out from inside. He says, "Do not bother me. The door is shut. My children are in bed. I cannot rise and give you bread." Most people read that and feel the rejection. They assume the lesson is about persistence. Keep knocking, keep asking, keep hoping, and eventually you will receive. Neville Goddard saw something entirely different. He pointed to the precise word the scripture uses to explain why the neighbor finally rises. It does not say the neighbor rose because of friendship. The scripture says the neighbor rose because of his impudence. Impudence. Shameless boldness. Audacity without apology. In Neville Goddard's framework, the neighbor represents the subconscious mind. The man knocking is the conscious desire. The bread is the fulfilled wish, whether that is money or love or freedom from debt. The subconscious does not yield to politeness or soften at the sound of need. Friendship means nothing to it. What moves it is one thing only: the feeling of absolute certainty, the pressure of an assumption so total and so persistent that it simply will not accept any other answer. As Neville Goddard himself said, you must knock on the door of the subconscious with brazen impudence, not pleading, commanding. This is the code hidden inside a 2,000-year-old parable. The poet William Blake, whom Neville Goddard studied deeply and revered as a fellow mystic, captured the same truth in different language. Blake spoke of the need to cleanse the doors of perception, to see existence as it actually is, which is infinite. Blake understood that timid perception builds a timid world. A contracted imagination produces a contracted life. The man at midnight did not care that the hour was inconvenient. He did not soften his request. He pressed forward with the full weight of his need converted into total assumption. He was not going home without the bread. That is the teaching. You are the man at midnight. Your subconscious is the neighbor. The bread is already baked. It is already inside. It is already yours. It is waiting only for the kind of demand that refuses to leave empty-handed. Now, we arrive at the center of everything. The law of assumption, as Neville Goddard defined it, is both the simplest and most radical law ever offered to the human mind. Consciousness is the only reality. What you assume to be true, you become. What you feel to be real, the world reflects back as fact. Not what you work for. What you assume. This reframes the entire conversation about money. Most people are managing their outer behavior to attract wealth, while their inner state is broadcasting poverty. They work harder. They take courses. They optimize their schedules. Some of those actions produce results. But Neville Goddard insisted that the outer world is a reflection, never a source. The source is always the state of consciousness assumed on the inside. This is where divine arrogance becomes not just permissible, but necessary. Let us be precise about what that means, because it is easy to confuse it with ego. Divine arrogance is not the arrogance of someone who believes they are better than others. It is the audacity of a being who knows that consciousness creates reality. It is the boldness to look at an empty bank account and refuse to accept it as the truth of your identity. Neville Goddard taught that the three-dimensional world, everything you can see, touch, and measure, is the past. It is yesterday's imagination solidified into today's experience. When you react to it with fear, you are allowing yesterday to govern tomorrow. When you override it with assumption, you are exercising your actual creative authority. He described a practice that sounds almost unreasonable to a conventional mind. When you look at your bank account and the number frightens you, Neville Goddard would say, do not accept that number as your identity. Turn your attention inward. Feel, with absolute specificity and physical sensation, what it would feel like to see a number that thrills you. Not the seeing from the outside, the feeling from inside of a person for whom that number is completely normal, completely expected, already assumed. Occupy that state. Sleep in it. Walk through your day inside it. This is what he called living from the end. The fourth dimensional space Neville Goddard spoke of is not some abstract territory beyond access. It is imagination itself. It is the only ground where time does not exist, where wealth exists before it has a bank statement, where health exists before it has a doctor's report, where love exists before it has a name attached. He once described imagination as God, not a symbol of God. Imagination is the very presence of the divine mind operating in and as you. When you imagine wealth with the full commitment of a king who does not question his treasury, you are not pretending. You are creating. You are doing the one thing that has ever actually built a human life, assuming its reality before the senses confirm it. The three-dimensional world will follow. It has no alternative. It is downstream from consciousness. It is the shadow cast by the light of your inner assumption. Move the light. The shadow changes itself. Let us bring this into your actual life, because the purpose of this teaching is not information. It is transformation. You are living in an age that seems designed to punish exactly the kind of inner confidence Neville Goddard described. Economic anxiety is everywhere. The cost of living climbs. Incomes feel fragile. Social media places the appearance of other people's wealth in front of your eyes with perfect frequency and zero mercy. The modern financial environment is one of the most powerful generators of the beggar state ever built. Recognizing that is itself the first act of liberation. Joseph Murphy, whose work ran parallel to and often reinforced the teachings of Neville Goddard, wrote directly about this problem. Murphy observed that most people had been conditioned into a poverty consciousness so deep that even when money arrived, they lost it. The outer abundance could not survive inside a consciousness configured for lack. Money without a wealth assumption does not stay. That is the mechanism. It is not luck. It is not fairness. It is law. Now consider Abdullah, the Ethiopian rabbi from whom Neville Goddard received some of his most foundational instruction. Abdullah did not debate whether the law worked. He did not soften his teaching with qualifications. He stated the truth and let it stand without apology. When Neville Goddard told Abdullah that he wanted to travel to Barbados but had no money, Abdullah refused to engage with the limitation. He told Neville Goddard that in the spiritual reality, he was already in Barbados. The ticket appeared within days through entirely unexpected channels. That is brazen impudence applied to a real problem. Here is how it looks in your daily financial life. You stop treating your bank account as evidence of who you are. You start treating your imagined wealth as the only truth that has any creative authority. This is not denial. The bills are real. The account balance is visible. The point is that reacting to those numbers with fear hands them the power to reproduce themselves in your next month and the month after that. One question to ask every morning before the world gets loud: who am I in my imagination right now? If the answer is someone worried about money, you have given the press new instructions for lack. If the answer is someone for whom wealth is natural, expected, and already present in the only dimension that actually creates reality, then you have issued a command. Neville Goddard recommended one specific practice for financial states. As you enter the threshold between waking and sleep, the hypnagogic state, the subconscious is most open, most easily impressed. In that moment, he said, do not review your debts. Do not rehearse your worries. Inhabit the scene of fulfilled desire with total emotional specificity. Let the sensation of relief wash through your chest. Notice how your shoulders drop when the weight of financial pressure lifts. Sit inside that stillness, the quiet certainty of someone whose wealth is already settled, and let sleep take you from there. The law does the rest. It has no other setting. You now hold something most people will never receive, not because it is hidden, but because it requires a level of self-honesty that most people prefer to avoid. Here is the metaphysical resolution of everything in this video. You are not waiting on the universe. The universe has always been waiting on you. The wealth, the freedom, the life you have imagined in your most honest moments of desire, none of it was ever beyond your reach. It was waiting for you to stop requesting it from a state of lack and start commanding it from a state of assumption. Brazen impudence is not rudeness. It is the absolute refusal to accept the evidence of your senses as the final verdict on your life. The spiritual audacity to say what I see in the outer world is the past. What I hold in my imagination is already formed, and I will not be moved. That is what the man at midnight understood. He would not go home empty-handed. The bread was already inside the house. The only thing between him and it was his willingness to keep pressing until the door opened. Stop asking the door to open. Press. Neville Goddard said it plainly. The world is yourself pushed out. Every circumstance that surrounds you, every number in your bank account, is a projection of your own inner state. Change the state with the total, unapologetic commitment of a king, and the projection must change. The law has no alternative. This is the relief of power, not the exhausting effort of forcing the world to comply with your wishes. The deep, settled relief of knowing that the only work required is the work of assuming. And assuming, unlike grinding and hoping and waiting, can happen in a single moment. Right now, in the next breath you take. If this message shifted something in you today, if even one crack formed in the wall of your old belief about money and receiving, then you already know these teachings are not empty words. They are a code, and now that code has begun to work in you. Join this community of manifestors by subscribing to the Goddard Code. Every week, we go deeper into the laws that Neville Goddard spent his life uncovering. Laws that have been quietly transforming ordinary lives into extraordinary ones for decades. You belong here. Click subscribe and take your seat. And as you move forward from this moment, carry these words that Neville Goddard left behind. Dare to assume you are what you want to be. Persist in that assumption. And in a way no one knows, the outer world will reshape itself to match your inner conviction. Command it.